Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating, not just tech, but life itself. People talk about the digital age, but maybe, just maybe, the 21st century is turning into the century of biology.
Yeah.
It feels like we're on the cusp of having this incredible power to, read, edit, even engineer living systems, which sounds amazing, right? But
hmm
also incredibly complex.
It really is. Biological systems are, well, they're alive, they adapt, they're intricate beyond belief sometimes. But underneath all that complexity, there seem to be patterns,
Hmm.
principles. And if we can genuinely get a handle on those, understand them deeply, we could reshape things,
Yeah.
make our world safer, more predictable, maybe, hopefully, better for everyone.
Right. So that's what this deep dive is about, mapping that frontier.
Exactly. We're looking at a framework of 7 moonshot challenges.
Hmm.
Think of them as like catalytic goals, grand challenges that aren't just academic exercises. They're strategic, they're urgent, and honestly, they're deeply human questions we need to tackle.
Okay, 7 moonshots. Where do we start? Seems like we need a foundation first.
Precisely. The first 2 moonshots are all about that foundation. Understanding life itself,
Yeah.
really grappling with what life is and, how it works fundamentally,
So moonshot number 1.
is exploring the fundamental paradigms of life. And it starts with a question that sounds almost childishly simple. What is life?
Right. Seems obvious, but you're saying it's not.
It's kind of astonishing, actually. With all our science, we don't have one universally accepted definition. We talk about traits like growth, reproduction, metabolism. But, well, non-living things can mimic some of those. Think crystals growing or fire spreading. So where's the line? What's the essential spark?
And this creates a paradigm gap you mentioned. Like we're missing something fundamental.
Yeah, exactly. In physics, you have these huge tools, particle accelerators, to probe the very basic structure of matter.
Okay.
But for biology, for the emergent complexity of a cell or an ecosystem, we don't really have those equivalent epistemological instruments, if you like. We're still searching for the laws of life.
Laws of life, like Newton's laws, but for biology.
Sort of. Something that could maybe explain why complexity seems to increase over evolutionary time, or how chemicals self-organize into something living. We might need new theories, maybe even new kinds of math, to capture how life works across all these different scales: genes, cells, organisms, whole biomes.
And why does nailing that definition or finding those laws actually matter, practically speaking?
Because understanding life as it is the bedrock for shaping life as it could be. If you want to program a cell, or design a resilient ecosystem, or even understand the origin of life, you need to know the rules of the game first. It gives you a much firmer footing.
Okay, that makes sense. Know the rules. But then what about things like CRISPR? We are editing genes now, even without perfect understanding.
We are, and it's incredible progress. But it often relies heavily on trial and error, which hits limits fast when things get really complex. And that leads us straight into the second moonshot: unlocking the genotype to phenotype relationship.
Ah, the G to P link. This is the big one, right? Predicting traits from genes.
It's often called the Holy Grail, yeah. Being able to look at an organism's DNA, its genotype,
Right.
and predict exactly what it will look like, how it will function, its phenotype. That's the goal. We can sequence genomes like nobody's business now, but translating that sequence into the actual living creature, still a massive challenge.
So we have the blueprints, the DNA, but we can't reliably visualize the finished building.
That's a great way to put it. It's not just the DNA sequence itself. It's how genes are turned on and off, regulated, how they interact with each other, and critically, how the environment shapes development. It's incredibly dynamic. Think about colossal biosciences trying to bring back the dire wolf.
Right, the de-extinction effort.
They made edits to gray wolf DNA, aiming for dire wolf traits. But what did they end up with? By their own admission, gray wolves with 20 edits, not actual dire wolves. They even said it's basically impossible to recreate an identical extinct species this way.
Wow, so just editing the genes doesn't guarantee the original outcome. That really shows the gap.
It absolutely does. Predicting the full phenotype from DNA alone is still way beyond us for complex organisms.
So what would a breakthrough look like? How do we bridge that gap?
It'll likely involve a combination of things. Much more powerful AI models trained on vast data sets comparing genomes and traits across many species. Maybe even creating digital twin simulations of organisms that can model development with high accuracy.
A digital twin of an organism? That's wild.
Imagine being able to design a microbe computationally to, say, produce a specific biofuel, and knowing it will work as designed when you built it in the lab. or predicting how coral reefs might adapt to warming oceans just by looking at their genes.
That would be like having a periodic table for biology, bringing order to all that complexity.
Exactly. It allows you to design life with confidence. Huge implications for medicine, agriculture, conservation, materials, you name it.
Okay, so we've talked about understanding life. Now let's shift gears to actually building with it. Engineering biology.
Right. And this brings us to moonshot number 3, making biology predictably engineerable.
Predictably engineerable. So making biology work more like software or electronics.
That's the vision, essentially.
Yeah.
We want to get to a point where designing and building biological systems is as reliable and programmable as, say, designing a silicon chip. Right now, if you take a genetic part, maybe a gene that produces a certain protein and put it into a cell, it might work great or hardly at all, or do something unexpected depending on the cell type, the conditions, what other genes are around it. There's a lot of biological noise.
So it's less like coding and more like gardening. You plant the seeds, but you're not entirely sure what you'll get.
Huh, that's not a bad analogy,
Yeah.
especially once you get beyond simple things like bacteria or yeast. For more complex systems, our understanding of the genetic programming language is still pretty basic. You can't really scale up reliably if you can't predict the outcome.
So how do we make it more predictable? What needs to happen?
It involves improving our predictive models, definitely using AI to understand those complex interactions, developing better design tools, and crucially, establishing libraries of standardized genetic parts that behave reliably and consistently across different contexts. Places like biofoundries and cloud labs are key here. They automate the design, build, test, learn cycle.
Design, build, test, learn. Speeding up that cycle.
Exactly. Tighter feedback loops mean faster learning. The goal is to make the cell less of a black box and more of a, well, designable space.
And for you, the listener, what's the payoff? Why does this matter?
Well, it means faster innovation across the board in biotech. Imagine custom microbes cleaning up pollution, or plants engineered for drought resistance, or cell therapies working predictably every time. It also lowers the cost and the barriers to entry. Makes innovation more democratic, like standardized parts did for electronics.
Okay, so we can engineer it predictably, but then you have to make it in large quantities.
Yes, and that's moonshot number 4, scaling biotechnology with design for manufacturing. DFM, as they call it in other industries.
This feels like the unglamorous part, maybe, but essential.
Absolutely essential and often overlooked. It's shocking how often something works beautifully in a tiny lab flask, but completely fails when you try to scale it up to a huge 10,000-liter industrial bioreactor. Living cells just behave differently under those large-scale conditions, different physics, different nutrient flows, different stresses.
So the biology itself changes at scale.
It can, yeah. Or the process just isn't efficient. Historically, biotech often figured out the science first and worried about manufacturing later. DFM means thinking about manufacturability right from the start, during the design phase.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Take gene therapy. You might have a virus that delivers the therapy effectively in lab tests, but maybe the way its DNA is coded makes it really hard to produce that virus in large, pure batches needed for patients. Applying DFM might mean making tiny changes to the DNA sequence, optimizing codon usage, for instance. It doesn't change the function of the therapy, but it can dramatically increase how much of the virus you can produce efficiently in the bioreactor.
So small tweaks early on save massive headaches later.
Precisely. It makes the whole process faster, cheaper, more reliable. Prevents those multi-year delays in getting a breakthrough from the lab to the people who need it. Initiatives like BioMajor are working on this, building bridges between lab research and industrial production.
And the benefit for everyone listening is pretty clear. Getting innovations like vaccines or new medicines faster, making them more affordable, being able to respond to crises quickly. It's about turning potential into actual impact.
Which brings us to a really critical set of questions. How do we deploy all this power responsibly, wisely, safely? This is where the last 3 moonshots come in.
Right. So moving from engineering to deployment, what's Moonshot 5?
Designing adaptive biological infrastructure for an uncertain world. Think about 20th century infrastructure.
Yeah.
Huge power plants, massive centralized factories, big hospitals. Powerful, but sometimes brittle. If one part fails, the whole system can struggle.
Okay, so what's the alternative for the 21st century?
We need infrastructure that's more adaptive, distributed, resilient, especially using biology itself. A fantastic example is BioNTech's BioNtainer.
The shipping container vaccine factories.
Exactly. During COVID, vaccine making was stuck in a few huge facilities. BioNTech developed these modular, containerized mRNA factories. You can ship them anywhere, say parts of Africa, set them up quickly, and enable local vaccine production. It's distributed, it builds local capacity, and it's much more robust. If one container has an issue, the others keep working.
That's a powerful shift, like an internet of biomanufacturing.
Or a global adaptive biogrid. It could allow for rapid responses to pandemics, tailored agriculture for local climates, things like that. It democratizes access to cloud labs anyone can use remotely, portable gene sequencers. It builds resilience from the ground up.
Okay, adaptive infrastructure. But then there's the why and for whom, the economics and ethics.
Which leads perfectly to Moonshot 6, aligning bioeconomy incentives with human and planetary health.
Yeah.
This is fundamental. Will this incredible biorevolution benefit everyone, or will it mainly serve profit motives, maybe even exacerbate inequality? This moonshot is about trying to build a conscience into the bioeconomy.
That sounds difficult. Where are the incentives misaligned now?
Well, the classic example is in pharmaceuticals. Research often chases diseases prevalent in wealthy markets because that's where the return on investment is highest. Meanwhile, diseases affecting millions in poorer countries, malaria, TB, get comparatively less funding, less innovation. It's a market failure. There's a huge gap between what science could do and what the economic incentives actually drive.
So how do you fix that? Just more government funding?
It's more about smarter incentives. Things like mission-oriented funding, where governments or foundations set big goals like a universal flu vaccine and really invest to pull innovation through. Advanced market commitments for vaccines, where funders guarantee they'll buy successful vaccines for low-income countries, are another tool. And rethinking intellectual property. Could open source approaches work for some drugs, sharing knowledge to lower costs?
Open source pharma. Interesting. What about the planetary health side?
Yeah, we need incentives for biotech that provides environmental benefits, like carbon markets rewarding companies whose microbes capture CO2, or policies favoring sustainable biomaterials. Fostering a circular bioeconomy where waste becomes feedstock. It's about aligning profit with purpose. Capitalism with a conscience, maybe.
So the goal here is a bioeconomy worth inheriting, cures for all, healing the planet, sharing the benefits.
That's the aspiration. And connects directly to the final moonshot, number 7. This one ties everything together, embedding ethics, security, and narrative in biological futures.
Ethics, security, narrative. Okay, unpack that. This isn't just about lab safety.
It includes lab safety. Absolutely.
No.
Safety by design is crucial, but it's much broader. It's about recognizing that every time we develop a new biological tool or technology, we're writing a piece of the story about humanity's future. So we need to think about the ethics, the potential misuse security, and how we talk about it, narrative, right from the very start, not as an afterthought.
How do you bake that in early? It sounds like predicting unintended consequences.
One interesting approach is called violet teaming. It borrows from cybersecurity's red attack and blue defend teams. Violet teaming means proactively exploring how a technology could be misused or cause harm during development, but doing it with an ethical lens, asking, how could this go wrong? Who might be harmed? Have we talked to the communities potentially affected?
And the narrative part. Why is story so important?
Because stories shape how society understands and reacts to new technology. Think Frankenstein or Gattaca. Those narratives powerfully influence public perception about genetic engineering, right? So scientists and ethicists need to engage with storytelling too, not to spin things, but to explore the nuances, the ethical gray areas, through fiction, art, public dialogue. It helps foster a more informed conversation, moving beyond just hype or fear. If we don't shape the narrative responsibly, someone else will.
It's also about building trust, like the Asalamar Conference did for recombinant DNA back in the day, setting guardrails together.
Exactly. It's about responsible innovation through collaboration, scientists, ethicists, social scientists, policymakers, the public, ensuring diverse voices are heard. Because ultimately, when we engineer biology, we need to hold on to what makes life valuable in the first place.
Wow. Okay, so these 7 moonshots, they really cover a vast landscape, from the most fundamental questions about life to the highest levels of societal governance.
They do, but they're deeply interconnected. You can see the thread, right? Foundational understanding feeds engineering capability. Engineering enables solutions. Solutions need scalable infrastructure and aligned incentives. And all of it needs to be guided by ethics and foresight.
You can't just focus on one piece.
You really can't. As someone put it, you can't climb just one of these mountains. You have to summit them all. These aren't just technical problems. They are profoundly human challenges about the kind of future we want to build.
So this century of biology, it demands a new kind of leader, maybe. Someone who bridges the lab and society.
I think so. Leaders who are comfortable with the science, yes, but also deeply engaged with the ethical, social, economic implications. People who understand that engineering biology is, in a very real sense, engineering our future society.
And despite all the incredible complexity we've talked about.
There's a simple core, isn't there? All this science, all this engineering, at its best, it's in service of life. To heal, to nourish, to sustain, to help life flourish. If we keep that aim clear, maybe we can navigate the challenges.
A powerful thought to end on. So for you listening, maybe consider, what kind of biological future are we collectively writing, and how do we ensure it's one that truly serves life in all its forms? There's so much more to explore here. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.